7:40 here on this Wednesday afternoon. Friday, the Board of Governors is supposed to meet and make a decision about fall championships. And right now we are joined by Frank Rossi. He's an attorney in New York City, and he is a contributor for D3Football.com, and wanted to have him on to talk about the implications for Division III fall sports. Frank, thanks so much for making some time for me. How are you today?
Russell, I'm good. I do some research before I do interviews like this, and I was looking yesterday. Correct me if I'm wrong. Was Tommy Tuberville in this time slot just yesterday?
Tubbs was on in this time slot on Monday.
Monday? Boy, you went for the downgrade this week, didn't you, to have me on? But I appreciate it nonetheless. I'm not running for Senate, that's for sure. But it's been a heck of a week since Monday, and all these days are starting to run into each other because of all these cancellations we're hearing about. I heard your last segment, and very interesting what you were bringing up about some of the, lobbying going on to try to get the NCAA to avoid making the decision about canceling fall championships altogether. And I'm not sure how that's going to work ultimately, but I'll let you guide it from here.
Okay, so, and I wanted to have you on because I saw it, somebody retweeted a post that you had mentioned, and then we've DM'd a little bit. And so my interest is this. If they're talking about the cancellation of championships, and just to put this out here, you are on the record as saying this is not what you want at all, but this is what you're thinking, that the cancellation of the fall championships will lead to cancellation of the seasons in the fall sports for Division III. Is that basically where we're going with this?
Russell, about half of the schools by our count, maybe just slightly less than half of the 247 Division III schools have canceled or their conferences have canceled, which is basically a de facto cancellation for football for those member schools. And so what the three-step process was that I highlighted on Friday, and we had received a lot of calls from people that are in the know and that kind of wanted expectations dumbed down because they have a conscience about what this does to the student athletes ultimately in terms of their decision-making process that they have to go through here as well and the timing of it all. It was first we'd have a few more dropouts in terms of conferences. Then because of the numbers, the NCAA would be forced to cancel the championship, at least the football championship, if not all the fall sports, and then the final bloodletting would occur after that cancellation. More or less, what the governance body did yesterday, the management council they call it, in Division III, they recommended this to the Board of Governors for the Friday meeting. Now, the Board of Governors could kick the can to the August meeting, but let's think about what happens here. The preseason technically is allowed to start August 10th, I believe it is, in Division III. And so suddenly you're going to have kids that have no idea what they want to do, but they also have no information to go by from the NCAA, and their schools will act like they're playing football. And then suddenly in middle August, they're going to learn they're not going to have a championship and they're going to cancel. That's a pretty ugly situation ultimately, and why I don't think it's in the best interest of the NCAA to kick the can for another month.
Well, and there's cost involved with this because, Division III is non-scholarship. And a lot of these schools are very, very costly private schools. And in my case, my son is signed up to go play Division III football at Huntington College right there on Fairview Avenue here in Montgomery. And the question would be, if you're not able to play college football, do these kids spend that amount on education, which may wind up being remote? And I think that's a big, big concern for parents and students alike.
First off, I want to tip my hat to Coach Turk over there. After bouncing off a 4-5 season to an 8-4 season with a playoff win last year, 4-5 in 2018, he's done a great job resuming the winning ways over there at Huntington, and he deserves credit for that. That said, you're absolutely right. The decision-making is this is as bad as I've seen it in terms of parents and players reaching out to us. And I run a podcast myself called In the D3FB Huddle, which is at D3FB Huddle on Twitter. You'll see a lot of stuff from the last month or so we've been doing because we have had frantic parents and players asking us, what do we do? What is this conference going to do? What information aren't they releasing right now? What does this waiver mean? So, the adults in the room are trying to act like, stay calm, everybody, stay calm, we've got this. But the amount of information that's been released in the guidance and everything else has been pretty light. And now we're sitting here less than 20 days, give or take, from a preseason starting, and decision-making has to be made because the money involved is immense. Private schools are, $60,000 in some cases. And are we going to have fall football? I don't know. Are we going to have spring football? Well, that's suddenly a question that's really out there. We just released an entire show, a 90-minute show, in fact, on that question about the feasibility of spring football in Division III.
Frank Rossi joins us. He's a contributor for D3Football.com. You talk about the podcast as well. And Frank, this is a bigger issue than just football. With the finances of these small private schools, they can have upwards of 100, 150 kids that are coming to play football because they don't want to give up that dream. And if you're talking about anywhere from, $30,000 to $60,000 a year, if you eliminate 100 guys at that number, you're talking about the potential for universities shutting down.
Let me give you a number from a public school that I heard from a conference that canceled last week. That from what I understand, they lost 18 freshmen within days of that announcement. 18 right off the bat, and that's probably gone up from there. Look, Huntington has about 900 in the enrollment there. Imagine losing 18 students out of that. I mean, that's a big number ultimately. And I got to be honest with you, we're hearing the USA South may be reconsidering their July 14th announcement that they were going to roll with conference play only to the degree that schools didn't want to schedule non-conference play. And we're hearing that might be changing ultimately. We don't know if it's going to be finalized or what and how and when, but that's the word. And so what happens here? And, I understand we want to give these decisions their due, and we want to make sure these schools are able to survive. But at the end of the day, this is about the student athletes. It's about their health, safety, and welfare that we're even making these decisions in the first place. If the schools are making decisions based on the school's own survival, then we aren't necessarily doing what is supposed to be coming first here. And I take a lot of heat for saying things like that, but Russell, why are we doing it in the first place? It's the students' safety and their family safety ultimately as the next step if they go home or go off campus or whatever else. That's what's at play here, and I understand the finances. I understand all the problems that the schools are going to have, but decisions should be allowed to be made with due time for these student athletes.
Just another second with Frank Rossi, again, contributor to D3Football.com. So at the end of the day, when Friday comes and the Board of Governors either makes a decision or does not, is that the drop dead date, or is it July 31, or is there a different date that we're going to actually have a clearer picture of what all this is going to mean countrywide, nationwide for D3?
If you're looking for something like what we saw in the March range, where we had a date where the NCAA basically said no championships for the winter will be continued and nothing will happen in the spring, there isn't going to be that clearly defined date, I don't think, here. I think it's going to be essentially another move by the NCAA maybe to cancel fall championships, but we still have a lot of schools that will be able to make their own decisions. The big asterisk that got thrown into the mix yesterday was that the Management Council has proposed allowing spring conduct of fall sports. And essentially what it's going to allow school to do is to use a different kind of equation or a different counting methodology, days instead of weeks, basically. And you can use some of them in the fall and some of them in the spring if you so chose. So let's say Huntington wanted to play somebody locally this year wanted to play one game in November. They technically could, and then still play another 4 games in the spring And if they do it, that's 5 games, and they don't waste any eligibility for the players at that point, because the new rule for the NCAA is a 50% rule compared to the normal schedule, which in this situation would be 5 games. You wouldn't use your eligibility. But then there are other coaches out there that are demanding that the playoffs move to the spring. And if that happens, then you're risking eligibility there that way, not to mention the health issues that come with playing football games in the spring and then in the fall. There are so many big questions here that are all interlinked. And I said it last night, and I'll say it again. You cannot look at football in a vacuum, because when you move football to the spring, you've got to move women's sports to the spring as well. Title IX is a huge deal, and football is the biggest mover and shaker of Title IX issues in college. So, Russell, I wish I could give you a definitive, we're going to hear an answer soon, and we're going to have a definitive end of the season, and we'll be able to move this spring and everything else. There is no clear answer, and we are months away from clarity, I think, on the spring. We're probably weeks away from some level of clarity in the fall, full clarity, that is, although the individual schools seem to be pulling the plug faster than the NCAA is.
You can follow him at Frank Rossi. That's Frank, Rossi. Frank, tell everybody about your podcast again and where they can find that.
Sure. It's called In the D3FB Huddle. It's D3FB Huddle on Twitter as well. We do a bunch of Facebook videos, but we also have iTunes podcast version of it. And we normally go through the East region of Division III, but we, in moments like these, broaden out to the entire division, because obviously it's all interlinked right now and during the playoffs and stuff like that. We were gearing up for our 13th season to begin this fall. Right now, we don't believe we're going to have one, to be honest with you, but we're going to continue to pump out information that will help guide decisions and see where things are going to go for the spring as well. My co-host is James Baker. JB's out there listening, so shout out to him. And to all my friends over at D3Football.com, Pat Coleman, Keith, Greg, Adam, and Ryan as well, and Gordon Van. I should not forget Gordon. But we are a big family here in Division III, and you're a part of that family now with your son attending soon. Hopefully, you're going to hopefully enjoy what this family brings with it, which is a love for football with none of the upside of Division I, but the love of the game, really.
Frank, that was really, really great information. I really appreciate the time. Thanks so much. Be well, and we'll talk again soon, okay?
Thank you, Russell. Be well yourself.